it is time to look ahead to the second test of Ireland's tour to New Zealand tomorrow morning. They're in Dunedin. Kick-off is at 8:05 Irish time tomorrow morning. Delighted to welcome Niamh Briggs and Gordon Darcy to the show. Good morning, folks. Gordon, I might just start with yourself. What's the headspace like before a second test after you've been beaten, on the scoreline at least, comfortably in the first test? Is there this sense of opportunity that things can only get better?
Yeah, I think it's quite a hard one, isn't it? Because we'll get a good view of that this weekend. Is my line bad now? Is it?
You
can hear me fine.
Crystal clear to me, Gordon.
No, it's fine. I'm getting a call back in my ear. Yeah, like kind of looking back at the times we played in New Zealand, and there has been good performances in the second test, but realistically, history usually is the first test is that best opportunity to get a win over, or to try and get at least performance against New Zealand. I think we'll get a very good insight into how the players are in the first 5 minutes, and that's not trying to avoid the question, but it's almost exactly the same team, and that team struggled in the power play piece against New Zealand, and I suppose we're wheeling the same team out and looking for a different result. It feels it might be a stretch. What
other changes would you have made?
I think there was an opportunity to freshen things up. I think I'm a huge fan of Kieron Frawley. I think he's been a brilliant player this season, but his last 3 or 4 games he probably hasn't been playing to his high standards. And I think Gavin Coombs is probably one of the few players to come out of the Maori game with a little bit of credit. I think he definitely could have offered something there. And again, Bundy, should there have been space made in the centre for him. I don't think Gary Ringrose had his best game. But you're sticking with the mainstay, and I think there's not that one of the things I think is very obvious, and is there isn't that much room for selection. We know that with the size of squad they brought, and without trying to avoid it, the quality that is or isn't there. So there was probably 2 or 3 more places they could have selected, and the fact they didn't, is surprising, I think.
Niamh, good morning to you. Would you go along with that? The idea that he's been conservative in terms of his possible changes this week?
Look, I think he spoke during the week about giving opportunities to players that didn't probably have their best game. He openly said there was definitely issues in that game and players didn't play that well. And I think when you're a player and you're afforded a second opportunity, you kind of feel like that that the likes of Andy Farrell and his coaching ticket have that confidence in you, and maybe it spurs on a different performance. And I think we've definitely got to see something different. My biggest worry was that when Johnny Sexton went off, we seemed to lose our way a lot, and it's got to be a case that I think we've got to start breathing something in there, that if he isn't playing and if Joey isn't that type of player that's going to, direct play around, that somebody else takes control of that. I just didn't think we saw that last weekend.
If we leave the concussion issue to the side, would you have liked to have seen a change at 10 this weekend then, Niamh?
No, not particularly, because I think that Johnny Sexton is the best 10, and I think when you go down to New Zealand, you go down with a view to playing your best team every week, because that's how it's so difficult down there. We saw it last weekend. I think New Zealand's, I actually thought Ireland played really, really well for the first 25-30 minutes, but it's New Zealand's ability to be so clinical after mistakes. And I think you're kind of thinking, okay, maybe if we can start as well as we did and try and fix those mistakes or not give them easy access into our half, then we might have a better opportunity. Like New Zealand had 8 entries into Ireland's 22 last weekend and scored 6 tries. Phenomenal accuracy. So I think if you can try and manipulate the play a small bit and try and deny them that easy access through your own mistakes, then you're making life difficult for them.
Gordon, it's hard to find kind of new ways of talking about the Sexton conundrum for Ireland, because we've been talking about it for so long in terms of trying to find a successor, trying to find a situation that will suit Ireland at the next World Cup. Where do you currently stand on that? Is it just essentially squeezing the Johnny Sexton situation until it eventually runs out, or how would you play it if you were Andy Farrell?
Yeah, I think there's a fine balance, and I understand the need this opportunity coming into this, but there's very few games left to figure out if players are at a standard that you want to be at. If you want a World Cup to be, the ultimate judgment piece on it. So, Harry Byrne, it couldn't be any more Harry Byrne that he arrives in and gets injured in the first week that he's there. So, I'm not sure, and that all seeps into the coach's mindset. They're going if we pick this guy, can we actually, is he going to finish a game, let alone a training section? So I think he's starting to drift in their selection policy. And I do think on recent performance, Joey has all the potential in the world, but on recent performances, you're starting to wonder, is he going to be the option at 10 as well? So I think a guy, Kieron Frawley, to me, I think is somebody who could bolt over the next 12 months and maybe force himself into that utility spot as a 10, 12 playmaker. Because one of the things that was also very clear at the weekend was if Johnny's not there and it's just Joey, we need a second playmaker. Or you need that option around it. I know the game plan is kind of designed to remove that kind of dependency on Johnny. But when he's not there, it really doesn't click in the same way. So someone like Kieron Frawley, who's a natural ball player, a natural carrier with he creates space for other players. He may inadvertently be the solution.
Well, we were having this conversation with Ronan O'Gara last week, and he was saying that Frawley could very well be that option. The only issue is that how does he get his reps at number 10? Does there need to be kind of an overarching decision made on him being the next guy up at 10, Gordon, in terms of his Leinster game time?
I think it's going to happen naturally enough in Leinster. If Harry keeps getting injured, they're going to start having to look at position, and maybe he forces the issue as well and says, "Listen, you know what? I started as a 10. I did my time at 12." But yeah, I want to go head to head with Ross and Harry for this.
What do you make of that conversation, Niamh? Is that do you see the same trajectory for Kieron Frawley?
Yeah, look, I've been a huge fan of him for a long time. I think he's an incredibly good player, and I think that he is the perfect type of player that you'd want in your matchday squad because he covers an array of positions. But Gordon just hit the nail on the head there, and you did as well in relation to where is he going to get those reps. You've got to be very careful for next year. Johnny Sexton's obviously going to be, minded exceptionally well that he's peaking for, Six Nations and peaking for World Cup, and, therefore he'll have a set amount of games. But then if you're Ross Byrne, Kieron Frawley doesn't, if Ross Byrne is starting for Leinster, Kieron Frawley, is down that pecking order again. So Leinster don't see him clearly as the number 210. So that's a really difficult thing for him. He's very much in that balance. But for me, I just think he's an exceptionally good player. I'd have loved to have seen him involved in 23 this weekend, to be honest. But I just do think he offers you something really good. Very good at taking the ball to the line, but also exceptionally good footwork in and around that tight area, which is what you probably need tomorrow. So yeah, look, I do think there has to be a way we can try and force him in and put him under pressure in situations where we're thinking, okay, he's ready for that international step, because to be honest, at the moment, we don't really know.
And there's also, there's just as jumping in on that, there's also something to happen in Munster as well. So they need to figure out what the pecking order is. And that's something Johan van Graan never figured out in Munster. So there's still one of 3 backup out halves in Munster could come through in the next 12 months if they get, as you say, that game time and that game reps done to the player who deserves it. Like Jack Crowley could, you never know, he could come through. Ben Healy could overtake Joey Carberry. There is still potential out there because the current there is no clear pecking order in the current group, so there's still plenty of room for movement, I think.
And I guess the question to follow up with that, Gordon, is 15 months enough time for a satisfying outcome to happen here?
Yeah, listen, there's you can, if you're good enough, you'll have your first test and it'll be rabbit in the headlight stuff depending on who you start at, and you just go, oh, actually this is quite a big step up. But if you're good enough, you adjust to the pace, and you're going to have good players all around you playing with Gibson Park, playing on the front foot. If you're good enough at 10 and Ireland play the way, win their set piece, which we know is paramount to where they're going, you're a good decision maker flat at the line. The Irish, you will swim rather than sink in that team. You just need to get the opportunity. That's what I think kind of Niamh and I are kind of saying, Kieron Frawley would do really, really well in that first team.
This isn't the opportunity though, isn't it? Maybe not this weekend, well obviously not this weekend, but the final test again.
If we win this weekend, it's listen, we'll judge this very harshly obviously off the back of it, but if we don't win this week and you make a raft of changes next week, is that the solution?
No, but it's
when you're making selections based on the reactive selections, you're all it will feel very it'll feel very disjointed, I think, at that stage.
It wouldn't even be so much, I'm not suggesting like a raft of changes, it's just about the situation at 10, like playing beside Gibson Park, playing behind your first choice pack. Like there won't be too many more opportunities that are as good as playing away against the All Blacks, right? You can pick that up.
Yeah, like listen, yeah. Niamh.
Sorry, go for it, Niamh.
Sorry, yeah. Look, you're completely right, but I do think it all depends on this result of this weekend. I think if Ireland win that game, they go into a Test series decider, and you're thinking there's no way there's going to be many changes, unfortunately. But if there isn't, then 100%. But I still think that they need to give Joey that time too, and there's the fine balance. There's a clear definition that Johnny's number one and Joey's number two, and everything else comes in after it. And at this point of time, and Joey needs more reps at that level. I think Ronan O'Gara hit the nail on the head on Sky Sports last weekend to say that he's a very good and exceptionally good rugby player, but is he an exceptionally good 10? I think that's where the conundrum with Joey lies at the moment. So do you decide, okay, he could be our utility back in terms of our second playmaker from a 15 position, and let's try and move Kieron Frawley into that 10-12 position? I don't know, that's definitely way above my pay grade, but I think at the moment it's very clear and obvious to me that that Joey is their second 10, and if there's going to be a change at that position next weekend, I'd imagine it'll be him starting there.
Gordon, I know I need to let you go in just a couple of minutes. Just on the All Blacks, it's interesting looking at their team this week. Ronan O'Gara saying in the Irish Examiner that Whitelock is a 10 to 15 point difference maker. Do you put him down as that big a loss for them this weekend as well?
Potentially, yeah. I think it would give, because I was wondering how they were going to solve the lineup, because obviously the calling aspect from James Ryan doesn't seem to be coming massively natural to him, and that Dan Sheehan is only a recent convert into hookers. So I think it does give them a massive opportunity to win quality possession and for players to be banking on it. I think that's a huge turn for Ireland, because they can be a little bit more creative, they can get a little bit of movement, they can get some tempo into it, and they can just, if they win their ball, then anything can happen. So when New Zealand competed, and we watched the game back, when New Zealand competed at our line-out, like, we really struggled. We really did, and he's a key driver in that.
What do you expect will happen tomorrow, Gordon?
I'm just going to shake my magic 8 ball here. I just worried with the form of key players coming in and their ability to last, particularly in the tight 5 against this. And I think New Zealand know have a good footprint to stop Ireland. I think we will be really competitive again for 40, 50, 60 minutes, but I'm not sure we're in a position at the moment to be able to stop that kind of 10 to 14 minute spell that New Zealand are so capable of, scoring that 3-4 tries on the bounce that just blow teams away.
Gordon, thanks a million for being with us this morning. Take care.
Thanks a million, guys. Niamh, good to catch up here.
Niamh, we'll just pick things up there. In terms of when you analyse Saturday last week, and you've touched on this already, the sort of, I guess, the ruthless efficiency of the All Blacks, and then maybe some of the inefficiency from Ireland in attack, those near misses. Do you cling to those as like instances of hope, or does that actually suggest to you that this is going to be the trend throughout the entire series?
No, I definitely think them instances of hope. They're quite easy fixes. I think in terms of that efficiency in the 22, I think I read somewhere yesterday that they had 12 entries and they came away with 3 tries, and it was an unfortunate one with Joey, obviously, and Van der Fleer, and so there was definitely opportunities. And I think that if you're Andy Farrell and Paul O'Connell and these guys, you're putting down the screen and you're saying, look, we've had a lot of entries in. This is our ability to get there. We can do it. So we minimise these mistakes, or we look at changing up a power play within that zone. Then there's space, and there was a clear picture while they were continuing to pick and jam around the goalposts, and Gary Ringrose is in acres of space on the edge. You're just looking at one quick thinking flash, like, Gibson Park's quick flat pass, or like even a flat kick, and that's another score. And I do think that there was opportunities there that they left behind completely and utterly, in terms of, I understand that they're their set piece caused issues, the scrum and the line out. But I do think that if you're looking at them objectively and you're trying to build confidence in that group, you're telling them, okay, look, we've become more efficient in these areas and scores will come.
And I guess that probably explains some of the team selection as well this weekend. It is backing them to get it right this weekend. I hate to be, a glass half empty with this next point, but the outcome this weekend is really important in that context. Like if they have a similar enough scoreline after being backed midweek, that probably puts them in a pretty difficult position going into Test 3 and even, I guess, the long-term confidence of this team.
Yeah, look, I think it's very difficult in terms of, and very different in relation to that confidence thing. We speak all the time about how difficult it is to win down there. And of course it is, because you've got to remember this side of the world, they're at a very end of a very, very long season. And when New Zealand come to Ireland in November, they're at an incredibly long season. So it's really difficult to gauge until you actually get to a World Cup. And I think that they won't read a huge amount into the fact that if they, results or whatever it is after the end of these 3 tests. I think it'll be more a case that, okay, we've set pointers out in terms of points of difference in relation to getting guys international experience, getting guys experience in camp. And you find out very quickly of who are those that are good in around that environment, who can catch up quickly, who's very coachable. And then with a viewpoint that, okay, we can take these guys and improve in relation to the World Cup next year. And I think while the here and now is really important, I actually do think it's what's coming down the line for the next World Cup. That's probably where they have one eye on in relation to this group and where they're going.
So look, it can be a productive tour even if you do lose all 3 games. Like, it is possible to take positives from it even if that's the scenario.
Yeah, I 100% think it is. I think that, look, it's very difficult. You want to go down to New Zealand, you want to win, you want to try and create history because, you've never won an away test down there, and you can go and do that. Imagine the confidence and the off-season for these players. But also, you listen to the players, after the game and during the week. And for me, I thought it was a different kind of type of interview in relation to, yeah, look, we lost. There are definitely areas that we can fix, but we also know that we can be way better. And we also know that we played really well for that first 25, 30 minutes. And a lot of these players wouldn't have been in a position where if you make a mistake, one small mistake in the URC or Champions Cup, it can be covered up very quickly. At this level in New Zealand, this ruthless nature that they have, you drop a ball, you have a loose kick, their ability to score straight away off that, which we saw last weekend, is the best in the world, and it's what makes them so good. So I think you're going in this weekend with a viewpoint to try and not kick away possession loosely, to hold on to the ball more, to be more efficient in and around your set piece and that breakdown. And if at the end of the day the result per se doesn't go, but you've got a good performance, then that's a win, I think, because of where they are in their seasons.
And Andy Farrell's thing this week has been about the stomach for the fight. He says we'll see if we'll have the stomach for the pressure. That was his line this week. He's laid down that marker in the past, and it seems that the team has responded pretty well to whenever he's spoken about that. It is interesting though that is the challenge that their head coach is laying down in public for them this week, just to see if they have the bottle for a second test in New Zealand after that defeat last week. How does a team respond to that, Niamh, when their head coach is saying stuff like that?
Yeah, look, I thought it was really interesting before the tour. He said in an interview that we'll see who can, we'll know very quickly who can live at this level and who can't within his own playing. I thought that was very interesting, and I thought it was really good, very honest to say it, because as a player, you know exactly what the coach is thinking. And this week it's no different. I think he's completely right. I think it's, at times in the past you've lost the first test having played well in patches or made huge amount of mistakes, and then we've been in positions where we've got annihilated the following week and come back and played well in the third test. It's that ability to, and this is what it is, it's a World Cup prep almost. It's that ability to churn out performances week after week and to be able to put good games and good moments together, 3 weeks in a row, to get that emotional pitch, to be able to be mentally in there 7 days, every 7 days, because you get really high highs and you get really low lows, but it's that ability to be able to keep them in an even keel. And I know they spoke this week about, the work that Gary Keegan's doing with them and having that balance, that they're, not getting too down in relation to moments of that match and the result last week, but also not getting too high, if they go and get a win. So I think that's the most important thing. It's their ability to, they have an issue in the first or second game in their group stage in the World Cup, that they have the ability to bounce back. I think that's what he's looking for.
Because it did seem maybe at the last World Cup that once the defeat to Japan happened, kind of the wheels came off a little bit. Maybe that's a little bit harsh. Maybe it was like maybe they were never going to beat New Zealand that year anyway. But it did feel that maybe that got under the skin a little bit. So do you feel that they're a little bit better equipped at the moment to deal with those setbacks?
Genuinely, I don't know, because they've been, very efficient in the Six Nations over the last couple of seasons, and so this is the test, and this is what he's talking about. Andy Farrell is saying to whether we have that stomach, whether we have the ability to bounce back, whether we have the ability to be able to come off that pitch last weekend and be very, very disappointed, but to be able to turn up 7 days later and be very much in the zone. It's a very difficult thing to do for a player, but that's what he's looking for in relation to what's coming down the line. And I think they show up tomorrow. Players show up tomorrow and they play. That's a ticket almost to the plane to the World Cup, and so yeah, look, it is a very difficult thing to do, but and we don't know. It's like talking about players that we haven't seen before. Strength and depth in international rugby. There's nowhere like New Zealand to go and try and test the player internationally, but just to say to them, should we throw them in? We generally don't know, because we don't know if they're capable of that ceiling. So, look, I think that's definitely the conundrum for Andrew Farrell and his coaching ticket.
Alan Quinlan was making the point yesterday that if Ireland are in the game come the hour mark tomorrow, that they have every chance of winning it, and he thinks that they will win it if they're in that position. So what do Ireland need to do to get to that point, at least, Niamh, of being in a contest after an hour?
Yeah, look, I think they talked this week about, the set piece. Paul Conn spoke about the areas that they need to work on. I think Gordon made a good point in relation to, the line out and making it more efficient. We asked a lot of our front five last week, and we've got to ask them to go to the well again. And if they can negate that first 60 minutes we're in the game, well then, I feel like from a back three, back row to 15, that we're very capable, and we've got a lot of game changers in that. So, I do think that set piece is going to be huge, and they've got to be more clinical in that 22 space. So when they get in there, they've got to come away with a score every time. And they speak all the time about the ability to score tries against teams like New Zealand, because penalties won't do. But you've got to find a balance that, you've got to make sure that every time you enter there into that scoring zone, you're coming away with something.
Do you think they have a chance? Do you think they will come away with something tomorrow?
Yeah, look, I think they have a chance. I think it's going to be difficult for them for sure. The New Zealand team blew me away last weekend in relation to their efficiency, and I think Ireland aren't used to that. They're not used to that pressure constantly. But the fact that Moylach is missing is a big loss for them. He's like their leader. There's been a huge amount of calls for him to be the captain of the side, which is strange in terms of, just still an active player playing. But so, yeah, Dalton Papali'i has had a brilliant Super Rugby campaign. The fella that's coming for him. So I think it's going to be difficult. I think what Ireland are looking for tomorrow is performance. Of course they can win, but I just think you've got to look at a more consistent performance across the 80 minutes.
Yeah, for sure. Niamh, great stuff this morning. Thanks a million for being with us.
Thanks a million. Thanks, guys.